Welcome to RTS Confessions. This week, we bring you Taylor, an 18-year-old kid who fled Alaska after his family became a target for the criminal enemies of his degenerate stepdad. We sat down with Taylor in Las Vegas, and he described in detail the scams he used to run at a tattoo shop, how he deals with being a clinically diagnosed narcissist, and how psychedelics left a permanent scar on his psyche. Enjoy.
Let's hope it doesn't get.
Let's pray.
Why I like doing it at night, because I have to turn the AC off, and when I've done this during the day where we're just like sweating bullets,
No, I'm a very active person, and my sleep schedule is almost completely flipped because of the heat here.
Well, you're from Arizona. That's even worse, isn't it?
No, I'm from Alaska originally.
Oh, right. You moved to the States, you moved to the continental States. At what age?
I believe I was like 13, 12, around that area. I've been out here 5 years.
5 years.
13, yeah.
Yeah. And you moved out of necessity because of gang threats.
Yes. So I didn't find this out until later in my life. 2 years ago. The exact reason why we moved, my mom always made up just a reason. But my stepdad, my little sister's father, he's an absolutely terrible person.
In what way?
My mom used to tell me stories about how he had broken into somebody's house and kidnapped them basically and was holding them hostage, and they wouldn't tell him where the money was. So he took their newborn.
He was holding them for ransom? Not
ransom. It was more like they were there. He had a gun pointed at them. Tell me where all your money is type shit. But they wouldn't tell him where the money was. So that he took their newborn and he was holding it under the water and under water in a sink until they would tell him where it was type shit. He was an absolute terrible person.
Wow. So that came back to bite you in what way?
Because he was my stepdad. He considered me his son. He would tell people I was his son, even though I'm obviously not his son. And same with my other siblings. I went on fishing trips with this dude.
Yeah.
And
what was your experience of him?
I didn't know all the bad things until I was older. But I did know that he just overall wasn't a good person. He's an addict in every sense. He was a drug dealer and he was smoking his own supply.
And of what?
Meth, coke. He was doing coke. He was shooting up coke, putting in syringes and needles in his arms. A couple times my mom had to drag him from the living room because he had passed out, either ODing on something, blackout drunk, or just some bullshit like that. And she would drag him from the living room because he would usually end up being butt-ass naked.
Wow.
We were fucking kids trying to go to school. He was the leader of the Mountain View Crips.
Was he a black guy?
Yeah, he was black.
Okay.
I'm actually the only white kid in my family.
Okay. I'm surprised that there's even black people up in Alaska.
More than anything, we have Samoans. Outside Anchorage, the fucking white people for days.
Yeah.
It's.
There's natives too.
Yeah, lots of natives.
What part of town was your stepdad in?
He was in Anchorage. So I did 3 years with my mom, and then 3 years with my grandparents, and then 3 years with my mom, type shit like that. A lot of battles for custody. My mom severely neglected me because of just overall, she's not a very, I don't want to say intellectual person, because she is very intelligent, but she's not emotionally intelligent. She doesn't understand people's brains. She doesn't understand people being sad, people being happy. I remember when I first was going through the whole psychologist and getting diagnosed with a rap sheet of shit that nobody fucking expected. She didn't even believe me when I was in the car with her, breaking down, telling her I want to kill myself. And after that, she changed the subject and made a joke about something completely different.
Wow.
Just ignored it. And that's how she was growing up. I never was able to tell my mom, I'm sad about this, Mom. I'm angry about this, Mom.
You think she didn't care?
I don't think that she didn't care. I just think that either she thought her problems were more important, or she just didn't know how to react.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like that. They don't know how to react, so they completely just drop the problem.
Yeah. So she wasn't good at dealing with complex things or just
Emotions.
problematic emotions.
Yep.
She was more of a person to just kind of turn the other way.
I'm a lot like her in that sense.
So your stepdad, was he abusive to you?
He was abusive to everybody. Like, my mom multiple times has pulled guns on him. She ended up shooting him once in self-defense. He was just, easiest way to put it, like an overall terrible person. I know that he is getting out of prison soon. I believe in like 2 months or something like that.
Wow.
And
how long has he been in?
Since I was 8, so 10 years now. I don't know how he is anymore, but I do know that from what my mom is telling me, when he calls her repeatedly, nonstop, almost every night, and talks to her, he hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
So he's saying he's going to come here to meet his daughter, my
Come to
little sister.
Vegas.
Yep, for the first time. And I honestly don't know what to expect from him.
Yeah, do you fear that?
I don't fear him because I don't feel like he's man enough to do something like that. And I've definitely grown a lot, and I'm nothing what anybody expected me to grow up to be.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like he would cause any problems with me or my mom.
How did your stepdad get locked up?
He was in a car with 2 hookers, one of his friends. They had a couple pounds of meth under the seats, and then like heroin, and then they had like drugs out in display that were obviously being used at the time.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that there's all this like gang activity going on up in Alaska.
So that's like one of the biggest shockers people see when it comes to Alaska. We have a lot of gang activity. Like, everybody that lives there does illegal shit. It's honestly the only way to put it.
Well, Alaska is kind of notorious to be a place where people who are running away from something.
Yep, we don't expedite.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that probably have sordid, shady pasts.
Yeah.
Are up there and they get into what they get into, you know?
It's a mix. And then a lot of people, since we don't expedite it, a lot of people will come from Alaska into the States to get away from.
What do you mean you don't expedite?
So it basically, if you do something illegal in one state and you have warrants for it, if you go to another state, some states will expedite you, basically sending
ship you out.
Yep, ship you out. It's basically.
Alaska doesn't do that?
Nope. That's how my biological dad fucking got away from, I think, a 17-year charge.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So there's just tons of criminals just on the lam up there.
Yeah, and there is also the mix of honest folk, you know, people like my grandparents.
Of course.
A lot of that, you know, criminal activity was focused more towards Anchorage.
This is by far the biggest city.
Yeah, it's not our capital, but honestly, at this point, it's kind of our capital.
What is Juneau?
Juneau, yeah.
Yeah. Your dad got busted for what he was dealing.
Yep.
Okay.
And he was facing a lot of time, and he did the last thing you should ever do. He's started snitching. From what my mom tells me, his court case just started getting like smaller and smaller and smaller.
He's still been in jail for 10 years.
Yeah. And that's a severely cut charge from what he was going to get.
Yeah.
He got punished for being a snitch. He got beat the fuck up in prison, almost killed a couple times. I believe he did get stabbed though. And then if that wasn't enough, hits started getting put out on his kids' heads. Everybody knew that he cared about his kids, even though he was fucking terrible to all of them. And he had fucking too many of them.
How many?
Roughly, my mom says he has like 15 different baby mamas.
Okay.
This man is fucking different. But I could actually show you the article online, basically where it was one of my brothers killing one of my other brothers because they paid him. Fucking people will do a lot of things for money.
They hired one of his kids to kill another one of his kids?
Yep.
But would they also want to kill him?
They didn't want to kill him. They wanted to at first, but they wanted to make him suffer after that. They wanted to like, I'm assuming the goal was make him watch all his kids die and then kill him.
Wow.
It,
So they successfully killed a lot of it.
a lot of them, yeah. I didn't meet a lot of like my siblings, but
yeah, your step siblings who like were not even like
yeah,
related to
I did grow up with a lot of them though, and a lot of them that I did meet, I was too young to remember.
Yeah.
I didn't learn a lot of this shit until recently, like
right
2 years ago.
No one directly related to you got.
Nobody directly got killed, but a lot of like injured, like my mom.
What happened to your mom?
Fucking people shooting at her. My mom's street name is Trouble, and she drove a fucking Tahoe that had trouble on the side of it. You know, it's not that hard to miss that. So she would come back to her car and there'd be bullet holes in it after like going to the store or some shit. I remember at one point my mom was like giving my 14-year-old brother at the time a handgun for his safety.
Wow. So how long did this go on before you decided or she decided we needed to get out of this town?
I'd say 7 months. And like after that 7 months, that's when we left. But my mom only really put up with it until her lease was out.
So she wasn't going to break her lease.
No, it was more than that. It was a lot more than that. But we just weren't able to. We didn't have the money. We didn't have the resources. We didn't have anything out here.
You moved first to Vegas?
Yep, we moved straight to Vegas. We lived in a 3-bedroom house with 12 people.
Wow.
And there's a lot more packed households, but
yeah,
it wasn't a huge house, and that it's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. Those were mainly good relationships that you have with the people that you lived in that house with.
Oh fuck no! I for just recently I've established stable relationships with some of my family members.
But you have a good relationship with your grandfather.
Yes, my grandpa is very important to me. I actually recently just got a tattoo for him.
How did that relationship develop?
I didn't have a dad, and my grandparents offered to take care of me. And nobody's perfect, and I can't say my grandparents have some issues that definitely got thrown onto me that I developed too. Same with my mom.
What do you mean?
My grandma, this is something that I've worked my ass off to get rid of and improve and not be, but my grandma is a master like manipulator and liar and all that. She's just a deceitful person. And I grew up with those tendencies, and that's something that I to this day am still.
You mean that's just, you think it's like just a trait that you have genetically almost?
Yeah, same with my mom. She's a master liar and manipulator. And
how would you manipulate people?
Fucking, it's natural, dude. Like I'm a very confident salesman. It's pretty easy to fucking manipulate people into buying shit.
So like if you were going to give someone a course on how to be a salesperson, what would you teach them?
Don't let that person talk, because the more they talk, the more questions they're going to ask, and the less likely they're going to buy it the more they think about it. When I did that tattoo job, it came with like one hidden part that wasn't good. You're a scam artist. And that's the only way I can really put it. A lot of places here in Vegas have this system called saffing. And
called what?
Saffing.
Saffing. So
it literally stands for stupid as fuck. And that my first job at the custom t-shirt shop, that job is like where it kind of was created. And this shit's now out even like Cali, it's everywhere really. But basically, let's say somebody walks up to my booth and they point out a tattoo and they're like, how much is it? And it's something, and I'm like, $50, right? So they got that tattoo for $50. So another person comes up, they get that exact same tattoo, but not once did they ask for the price. That tattoo that was $50 is now $500.
Right.
I believe this is where a lot of my bad karma comes from, because my ability to manipulate and just like, I don't know how to explain it, but fuck people over is the best way to put it.
Interesting. So that's probably common practice at a lot of tattoo places.
So I wouldn't say real tattoo places, but temporary tattoo shops, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking anytime that I meet somebody here new in Vegas and they're like visiting and it's their first day out here or something, the first thing I tell them is always ask for the price.
So for a temporary tattoo, you were charging people $500?
Yeah, I've charged fucking upwards of, I think my most expensive was like $3,000. It was 3 tattoos. It was one for like 17 and then one for 14 and then one for like another 13. And I made 2 grown men cry from that. Yeah, no, so at my old job, it's a lot of completely new people that work there now, but I could call like 3 different people and they'll tell you I have the name as the dude who made the most people cry. I have made children cry, I have made mothers cry. These are my like something that I feel very terrible for and I regret deeply because this is my bad karma and I'm to this day trying to make up for this shit. But I've sent people home from vacation. I've fucking made a dude that was just with his friends that came out here worry about how he's gonna pay for the gas to get home.
Yeah. You were also like a minor, during all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, you're only 18 now, and this was years ago.
Yeah. I grew up very fast, so I automatically, to a lot of people, I come off very mature and just older than I actually am. So a lot of people, they'll think I'm older, like you. Thought I was 22. When I was 16, I ended up sleeping with a 25-year-old without her knowing my age, and I'm not a snitch. So I fucking, after that happened, people asked me my age, and I was like, "Oh, I'm 19." And I got stuck with that.
Yeah.
For a year and a half. People thought I was 19 to 20 and all that shit, but in reality, I was 16 to 17. And I like lived a life as this person who was a completely different age, lying and manipulating these fucking people into completely believing it, to the point where I had like moved into multiple apartments. I was making a lot of money from that tattoo job because I was the number one salesman from how much I was fucking people over, and then I had no bills, so I was just fucking straight income.
Yeah.
And I was making a lot of money, just lying to fucking everybody about everything, and just being my grandparents, my grandma, my mom.
How would your grandmother be a manipulator?
My grandma is. It's hard to explain, but she is the definition of OCD. I've seen her completely replace a fridge for a scratch on the door.
Okay.
It was like a stainless steel fridge, and my grandpa or something, I'm assuming a metal ring or something, fucking hit the door and left a scratch on it. And she spotted that shit from the living room, which is across the house.
Yeah.
She spotted that couch, that scratch, and she completely bought a new fridge because of it. She's combined with that, and her everything has to be her way thing.
Right.
She fakes fake cries. Like I'm living with them at the moment, and I'm assuming in like an hour or 2 she's gonna be getting a call. I'm gonna be getting a call from her, and she's gonna be giving me some bullshit reason on why I should be sad about this and need to come home now.
Is she a narcissist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Deeply. Same with my mom. I'm also one, but I'm a narcissist in recovery. Like, I admit that I am, and I avoid my narcissistic behaviors.
You're able to admit that you're a narcissist. That almost makes it seem like you're not a narcissist.
But I have narcissistic tendencies, and it took another person to point it out for me to even see it.
So, did someone diagnose you with narcissistic personality disorder?
Yep, I have a fucking rap sheet of diagnosis from the help of a psychologist and trained professional, and then also my ex. We were just in a very terrible relationship, very abusive. She ended up stabbing me twice.
Wow.
There was a lot of drug use. There was a lot of lying. I fucked her over a bunch of times. She fucked me over a bunch of times, got me robbed, got my house broken into.
How are you a narcissist in recovery? What does that mean?
That means I admit that I'm a narcissist. I know that I have narcissistic tendencies. For a long time, I wasn't able to recognize them because I didn't fully understand what the narcissist was. But
so, like, did it take some time for you to come to admit that? Were you in denial about it?
Yeah, fucking for the first while after I found out I was a narcissist and like admitted it, I still did all the narcissistic behaviors because
Like the scams,
it was a lot more than the scams.
like what?
It's hard to explain, but I anything that was like bad that I did, I didn't do it. Or I would lie just to make myself look good in front
Right.
of people.
Yeah.
I never could be the bad guy.
Right. What are the traits of a narcissist, and which ones do you identify with?
I have to check myself on my ego a lot because I can be very egotistical. I genuinely get mad if shit doesn't go my way.
Can you put the hat back on just because
Yeah.
the continuity is gonna get fucked up?
I gotta check that. Tie my hair up.
Yeah.
I can be very controlling. Like with my ex, this was a very bad behavior of mine. I was also very controlling along with like her being extremely controlling, but at one point her controlling took over my controlling, so I wasn't even able to be controlling.
Yeah.
My ego can become very, very big sometimes, and I don't like if people are better than me at certain things, like art. It's very hard for me to function with more experienced artists than I am because I start feeling inadequate. And
What do you think is the hardest of these things for you to change?
definitely my ego. I luckily am being very conscious of it right now, but sometimes it fucking slips up, and it's very hard for me to tell people what I've been through and my successes and my failures because I always start with the successes because I want to seem big up.
Right.
I'm not completely aware of everything I do, but every day I learn a little bit more, and that's all that matters to me. I want to be the best version of myself I can, for real, not just the narcissistic.
Well,
guy.
you're devoting yourself to your grandfather who's in chemo right now. That's a very selfless act. It seems like you're so young that you're not fully formed in any way. Someone could behave like a narcissist as a teenager and just mature to be completely different.
Yeah.
I don't know. You've shown in this interview to have a level of introspection that I think is really valuable, and I think you're on a trajectory to change into someone completely different, and you still have the ability to change into someone completely different because you're so young.
So I am very young, but I genuinely do believe that I would say that like my character, my personality, and like my level of understanding is much farther than I actually am.
You're sober now?
Yes. I've been sober from alcohol for 6 months and methamphetamine for like a year and 9 months or something like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Which was the meth harder to stop than the booze?
No, the booze was harder to stop, but the meth still affects me to this day.
How does it still affect you?
So up to 2 years after you stop using meth, if you use it for a prolonged experience and use a large amount of it, like I was doing, I was fucking getting paychecks every 2 weeks and half of it was going towards meth and shit like that. If you use it for long, there's this thing called meth psychosis. Some people experience it during use. Some people experience it for up to 2 years after use. I'm just now recently like
Getting clean of it.
Yeah, like not experiencing it as bad as I used to. And then I've
This is what, hallucinations?
it's the baby steps into schizophrenia.
I've heard of amphetamine psychosis.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people say that it's because of the sleep deprivation that you experience when you're on meth. That's really
So it's a lot of that, and then also a lot of people don't properly feed their bodies, so they're missing a lot of proteins and muscle deficiencies, and like it's a everything in your body is connected to everything. So if you're not eating right, your mind's not going to be right. Since I do have a lot of like experience with drug use and all that, I've permanently fucked up a lot of my life for myself, like a lot of my brain function and all that. I was using a lot of psychedelics because I was making them. So I know a lot of fucking like, I can grow you shrooms, I can make you DMT, I can show you what DXM is. I've gone like days straight tripping balls. And I still have remnants of psychedelic trips going on. I did DMT every other day because it was a 2-day brewing process for a year straight with one of my friends in Arizona. Well, on and off a year, we would go up to Arizona for like 3 months, and then we come back for like a month and then go back to Arizona type shit. But every time we were in Arizona, I had the ability to fucking make DMT in a closet with a jar and some fucking gasoline and this bark and this, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like acetone but in powder form, and it's just a process. I have it all in a notebook that girl has. She's like my sister basically, but she has that notebook and it has recipes for fucking all kinds of drugs, and I learned like how to make a lot of different shit. I learned what over the counter medications that will make you trip fucking balls. There's this one drug called DXM, and
Right, yeah, cough syrup. Dulcimer.
or Mucinex pills, the big green ones. You take about 40 of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's about a 4-day trip.
That has DXM in it?
It's like a tiny bit different. There's one chemical compound that's a tiny bit different that makes it not technically DXM, but it's basically the same thing as DXM.
Yeah, DXM's a dissociative. It's like ketamine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you take about 40 of them, it's an intense amount, and you trip for about 4 days.
Yeah.
When it comes to psychedelics, I'm all about it. I personally don't think I should ever do them again in my life.
Yeah.
And I try to avoid them, but when it comes down to it, if you can do certain ones in a very controlled manner,
Yeah.
I say honestly go for it, because everybody should experience
I
it.
think psychedelics are. I think everyone should have a psychedelic trip.
Yeah, at least once. And
I think maybe the fact that you have brain damage from methamphetamine use could make psychedelics affect you differently.
yes,
And psychedelics are not good with people who have a predisposition for schizophrenia, and amphetamine psychosis and schizophrenia are very related. So
this is the part where I fucked up my brain the most.
yeah.
So with my intense psychedelic use, I was also using methamphetamine at the same time.
Right. Yeah. That's.
And so
I don't think it was the psychedelics on their own. I think it was the psychedelics in conjunction with the meth.
it most definitely was. Me and my homeboy, we were trip fiends. We would fiend for like trips. We would crave it more than anything. Like, we couldn't handle not being on a psychedelic. It got to the point where we were living life on psychedelics. And at the time we were growing mescaline cactuses to try to make smoothies and trip off those. And it was just taking too long. So we just fucking got a shit ton of those Mucinex bottles. And we took a shit ton of those, like fucking more than 40. And your stomach hurts like a motherfucker, but that was the most terrifying 4 days of my life. I got up to go get water. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, got a glass of water, drank the water, walked back to the living room, sat down on the couch, and realized I never did any of it. But like, yeah.
That's crazy.
And I've had some crazy experiences with psychedelics. I watched my friend who I did a lot of psychedelics with, literally like be so desperate to feel something real or just like break it for a second that he took a box cutter and sliced his own calf open just to like not feel insanity for a second.
These were friends here in Vegas who, when you were living in the trap house.
Yes, this was one specific friend. I actually have no contact with him anymore because we can't function sober together. He was the person that I did a lot of my drugs with, and he did a lot of his drugs with me.
Yeah. You guys were looking for an escape from your own mind.
Yep. And we had a severe attachment to each other because we associated each other with drugs.
Right, of course.
And tripping and all that shit.
Yeah.
And
so what changed where you weren't looking for that escape anymore?
I started working so much that I couldn't even have the time to do drugs.
Yeah.
I had mastered coming down at work. I was able to fucking be coming down off meth, tired of shit, like falling asleep in the back type, and doing that at work. And he just wasn't working, and I was the only source of income, and so he never was able to get drugs. So he ended up being forced to get sober. I just was already on the steps there and basically done with the process. So I said, fuck it, I'm just gonna not use it anymore. It's $15 less every day than I have.
What message do you want people to know about you? Someone who sees your story, maybe heard some of the things you did in the past, or heard some of the things that you've been through in the past.
So I truly don't feel this podcast could explain everything that I want to get across. I feel that people just have to watch me in action as a human being.
Yeah.
Because I can say it as much as I want, but until my actions prove it, it doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
But if I was to say anything, people say be honest, be real, all that shit. And yeah, that's important, but the biggest thing is be humane. Understand that humans are pack creatures and we need each other to survive. And as much as you may want to be a loner, and as much as you may think it's easy to fuck people over and come up on them, and you want to cheat life and you don't want to do shit, you have no humanity. Having humanity is understanding that everybody has their own problems, and every time you fuck them over, it just creates one more. Be humane. Being humane is what's gonna make the world a better place. It's not about kindness. It's not about fucking not lying and not stealing anymore. Yeah, that's some big shit. But being humane, if you can just be humane, you wouldn't have the reason to steal. You wouldn't have any of that, because if you genuinely need something that bad, people out of the kindness of their heart, out of their humanity, will help you achieve it, because it doesn't take much to help somebody.
That's great, man. This was a great interview. I wish you the best of luck, and I think you're on a good path, so I don't think you have too much to be worried about. I think you're on a really good path. Thank you. All right. Send it.